Welcome. I'm Dr. Sanjay Sharma for Medskl.com, and this is If I Knew Then, a show that's really based on a very simple premise that when everything is said and done, life comes down to a few key moments and decisions. On today's show, we're thrilled to have Dr. Susan Reid, the chair of surgery from McMaster University, also an outstanding researcher in the areas of breast cancer and colonoscopy. Welcome to the show, Dr. Reid.
Thank you very much. Very glad to be here.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you. Now, let's just start way back when, and let's, tell me just a little bit about where you grew up and maybe some of the important influences that you were exposed to that really have shaped you today.
Yeah, sure. I grew up just the north part of Toronto, around Steeles and Warden, for anybody who knows that, in a time where that was just farmland. And so we were a bit in the country. My dad was a physician, a family doctor, and my mom was a nurse. And I was one of 7 children.
Wow.
So 2 older brothers, which is probably fairly influential on the development of a girl. So I was pretty much a tomboy,
Right.
Very much into sports when I was younger. And we have a lot of free reign on the farmland. So, lots of climbing apple trees and that sort of thing. I went to a pretty small school, which was actually a little red brick schoolhouse, the old-fashioned kind initially. And then gradually, as the city grew and became, encroached upon the farmland, along with it came a, brand new high school and new subdivisions. So I went to a school called Lamoureux Collegiate, which is still there up at Warden and Finch. And from there, went to York University, where I did a double major in psychology and phys ed. And from there, went to medical school at McMaster.
Now, growing up, obviously, with your father being a family physician, you were exposed to medicine, and I mean, did you sort of see him and say, that's a life that I want to live, or was it more than that? Or just take me through, maybe when you were in grade 10, 11, 12, did you contemplate other areas, other professions?
No, for sure. I really didn't. I think it was always in the back of my head that medicine was very interesting to me. I worked in my dad's office as a receptionist when I was quite young and in the summer times. And so I was exposed a little bit to that patient interaction. And he being a family physician in a time when family physicians really sort of did it all. We were exposed to that at home in terms of him being on call and conversations with patients and going to assist at surgery and visiting patients in the hospital as well as in his office. So, it was very much a big part of our life, witnessing what he was doing and how he was contributing. So I think it was always in the back of my mind. But when I went to university, I really wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. And that's why I did the double major. It allowed me to focus on the arts and as well as on science, since I loved both of them. And I was probably in about second year university when I really then allowed myself to really make that commitment to myself that this is what I wanted to do and this is what I wanted to pursue.
Yeah. And when you said that sort of double major, I mean, do you feel that was important as a physician now, looking back? Is that, sort of a path that you would recommend in terms of trying to, because there's a lot of kids now who are, pretty focused, hardcore on science. And, do you want to sort of speak or just think about how important art is in terms of being a physician right now?
Oh, I think it was really crucial for me, and I think that still holds all these years later. So that was a long time ago. I was going to university in the late 70s, and but I don't think it's any different. I think now having an education that involves the arts and involves the social sciences is very important for physicians. We are social beings and we have to interact with our fellow humans. And I think that if you're too focused on the pure sciences, you can lose out on developing some of those skills, and having that broader appreciation of other specialties, other careers in the world, and where other people are coming from. So I think it's still really important. And I think we do, see that in some of our medical school applicants, that there are, people who've chosen to do a health sciences versus pure sciences, or who've chosen to do an arts and science degree. And I think that we do see those kids coming through. I think they may have a little bit of an easier time when it comes to patient interaction and the social side of medicine.
That's interesting. And I remember seeing that there's some courses, in Harvard and maybe in McMaster as well, where, art appreciation is now becoming part of the medical curriculum. And, whether it's for increasing diagnostic ability or whether it's just kind of a deeper appreciation for arts, I think you're starting to see that in the medical curriculum, which is good, I think.
Yep, and there's a really nice journal that's put out by Ivor Mendez, who's the chair in Manitoba, called Surgical Humanities. So it allows surgeons to reflect upon, the arts and things that they're doing in the arts, or write essays about their experiences and express themselves. So I think it's really important.
Interesting. Now, so you went to McMaster for medical school. Take me through. That's obviously a 3-year program. But tell me a little bit more about your experiences. Some really important lessons that you learned besides just kind of the core curriculum.
Yeah, I was really excited to go to medical school at McMaster after 4 years of my honors degree and the sort of traditional approach to learning. I was really excited to participate in problem-based learning and to have more independent study and more group learning than what I had been exposed to. So I was really thrilled when I was accepted to McMaster. And I think that, one of the greatest things that we learned is, of course, we're the home of evidence-based medicine.
Absolutely.
And that was really, was really just beginning to gain momentum when I was in medical school in the early 80s to mid 80s. And so it wasn't just learning about evidence and how we evaluate evidence, but I think that McMaster was very good at teaching us just critical thinking and questioning things and asking why, and not always focusing so much on dogma. And that fits really well with the problem-based learning when you're doing case-based learning. So I think that was, and I've heard that expressed from other McMaster graduates as well. I think that was one of the greatest things about Mac.
Now, is there, when I look back at medical school, there's certainly, 2 or 3 cases or a handful of cases that I think, were instrumental in my thinking or evolution as becoming a physician, but also just left me with really important life lessons, And I'm wondering, is there, a few cases that stand out in your mind that, 1 or 2 that might have, that really consolidated what it's like to be a physician?
Oh, that's a really tough question to pick out just like 1 or 2 cases, especially when you're looking from medical school. But even more, I think, as you become into the clinical clerk years, I just do remember that once you're on the ward and you're being entrusted to go and see patients and take their history and do a physical examination, I remember being very struck at one time when I was relating a history and physical of a patient in the emergency room with abdominal pain. And the resident asked me a couple of questions. What did I think was happening? I think the patient had appendicitis. And said, I think the patient has appendicitis. Well, what should we do? I think the patient needs an appendectomy. And the resident says, right on. Okay, we're going to go and call the staff person. And it really, I was like, what, wait, don't you want to go and see the patient? Well, did you see the patient? Yes. Did you examine the patient? Yes. You think they have, well, I'm pretty sure they have. And it just really struck me all of a sudden that I had this extra layer of responsibility. And, he did go and talk to the patient and examine the patient and verify all my findings and whatnot and make his own opinion. But for a moment there, I was really struck with the fact that, okay, I am a really important part of this team because people need to trust what I say and trust what I'm relating on behalf of the patient. And it's going to make a big difference to this patient, because what you say and how you relate what the patient's findings are in their story can have huge implications to what happens to them next. So you better try and get it as right as possible.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. So it sounds like you've had some interesting residents when you were in medical school. Through your career, have you had, obviously you must have had some great mentors along the way. Do you want to speak to the importance of mentorship and maybe some of the great lessons that mentors have taught you in the past?
Yeah. So, when I was a second year medical student was when I began to seriously think that surgery was going to be a career for me. And that was a time when there was no female surgeons. I think in the general surgery program at the time, there might have been maybe one or two residents. But there was no female surgeons in the city except for one vascular surgeon that was at another hospital. So I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to talk to about my interest. And I had spoken to the program director, and he directed me to the previous chair of surgery. So our very first chair of surgery was Dr. Barbara Mueller. And he was in the tail end of his career when I was a medical student. And I went to see him and talk to him about a career in surgery and what would that look like. And he was amazing. He was so encouraging. He took me under his wing. He introduced me to different staff people. He invited me to come to clinic with him, to shadow him. He connected me to where I could do electives as a medical student to really help explore whether or not surgery was right for me. And then even when I was a resident, he continued to check in with me and encourage me to take, opportunities. He always encouraged me to try and become involved in research. And then when I became faculty member, the same thing. He encouraged me, worked with me, and then he retired, but I still had connections with him all the way, until he passed away, unfortunately, just 2 years ago. So he was really, a very important mentor in my life. And his approach to the Department of Surgery when he first came on in 1969 was everything that we want today in a Department of Surgery. He wanted to foster excellence in education with this brand new medical school that he was chairing this department. He wanted to foster research and brought on researchers, and clinical excellence was everything to him. So, you can see that reflected in the minutes of the meetings that, have been recorded from when he was chair. So it was a really fantastic opportunity for me to have somebody like him take me under his wing. But I've had other mentors as well along the way. I think, we find mentors that help us with different parts of our careers. And I think that's important. You can't always just have one mentor. You probably need to seek out a few as you go along. So from my own faculty, from my deans to other chairs have mentored me in my own professional organization. And you may have experienced this. So the Canadian Association of General Surgeons, I was thrilled to be involved in leadership positions there. And a lot of that was because I had mentors there who helped me along the way. So I think it's important for everybody in medicine to have a mentor, and to seek them out and to help them help you.
Right. And I think that brings up a great point, that the seek them out comment. So for, the medical students out there and for the residents out there, what's the best way to actually do that? How do you get a mentor?
So, there are some programs that do, they've instituted formal mentorship programs where they will align a resident with a faculty member when they come in. And that works for some programs. But I think otherwise, people are encouraged, and there certainly have been courses here at McMaster about how to be a mentor and how to be a mentee, which was a great course to have. But I think for residents and medical students, my best advice is not to be shy about approaching people. And I'm sure that you feel, and as a faculty member, I'll always make time for medical students and residents when they want to spend half an hour, have a coffee, or have a phone chat about what's happening with them. People are very, very receptive to being in that mentor role. And I think many times when you're more junior as a medical student or resident, you're a bit shy. And you're not sure how people are going to respond to you, or you feel that you might be a bother. And really, I think that's a lesson that, and I learned that even when I was a faculty member too, that, I would sometimes hesitate to seek out assistance and in terms of my career and where I was going. And now you look back and you say, oh, people love it. People love it when you ask them, right, for their opinion, and how can you guide me? And so I think that's a really big lesson for people to remember.
Great. Now, moving on to another aspect of your career, you're actively involved in a number of research lines, particularly breast cancer. I think is a strong area of your interest, and one of the things that we do in our ophthalmology program is, we mandate to do research, and I know that's a big emphasis at MAC as well. So just maybe walk us through, in terms of advice to being a clinician researcher, any thoughts, whether it's, how to just come up with great research ideas, or how to execute on how to develop a good pilot project and then execute on that study.
Right. So I think collaboration is the key. You cannot do it alone. Certainly you can do some of your own, internet searches and things like that to look at an idea that you might have and see what's out there. But when it comes time to actually creating new science, you really need to find some partners to be able to assist you. Nobody can do it alone. It's very time consuming to participate in research, particularly if you're going to be the lead on a research project in terms of writing grant proposals and that sort of thing. So I do encourage people to really find colleagues that they can talk to about, where they go. What we do here in the Department of Surgery is really encourage similar groups to form a research group together, and then look at how they can resource themselves to be able to get some grants, to be able to get a research assistant to help them. Because for clinician researchers, that's always the difficulty, is trying to balance the time between research and the time and being a clinician. And if you have a bit of a team behind you, then it makes it a little bit easier.
Now also take me through a little bit about the decision. I mean, you're in medical school, you're McMaster, you're being exposed to a lot of great people. And I think you said earlier on, you decided you wanted to be a surgeon. And then, so you applied for residency, and take me through the residency. Was that what you expected it to be? Was it, a shock to the system? Just kind of walk us through expectations and versus reality.
Well, it's really interesting to reflect back on that time, because I think everybody was really well aware of how all engulfing a surgical residency was at that time. So I think I went into it with my eyes wide open. I think I was always also pretty naive about what the rights of residents should be, because that was not, para was not what it is today. And so we really were just, so excited just to enter into surgery. We didn't have the same, I think students today are much more sophisticated in terms of what their expectations are, in terms of where they're going and their rights as residents. We didn't have any of those expectations. So we knew what the call was going to be like. We knew what the faculty were like. And so I didn't find it was that surprising to me. I did work, 1 and 2 and 1 and 3 call for most of my residency. And that was, so there was no restrictions with being on call back in those days. And, as a chief resident, that final year, you're just on call the whole year. But that being said, our faculty were fantastic and very supportive. And if you had been up all night, then they understood. If you said, I just can't keep my eyes open, I need to go and get some rest, or I have a research project that I have to go and get done. So, I think it wasn't as horrible as people sometimes. There seems to be a bit of lore around what surgical residency was like. So I loved it. I enjoyed every bit of my surgical residency. Looking back, could I have been maybe less tired if I didn't have to do so much call. Maybe, probably could have been more productive in terms of research projects. But, lots of residents are creating fantastic contributions these days to the research mandate of their universities. And we just didn't have the time to do it back in that day. But yeah, it was long and it was arduous, but it was exciting and thrilling, and I wouldn't change it.
No, it's funny as where we're at in our lives now. As attendings and professors and things like that. What I think a lot of medical students don't realize is how hectic life is still. So it's not the amount of work you do and the kind of the issue of life work balance is not a discussion only limited to medical school and residency. It's still an issue. So, let's talk a little bit about how you balance your various activities. Obviously you've got a very high-powered administrative responsibility. You're active in research, and then you're pretty dedicated to clinical care as well. So, how does that all fit together?
Yeah, I always say I just need 6 more hours in the day. That's all I ask.
Yes.
6 more hours.
Yes.
And do it all. But I'm also a mother, and I'm a wife, and I have friends and a social life, and it can all fit together. I think that as working professionals, whether you're in medicine or you're in law or nursing, everybody has the same issues to cope with in this day and age. We have aging parents and we have children that need caring. We're sort of that sandwich generation. And you're right, residents now, they get to go home after call. We don't, right? We always tell them, just wait. Because now when you become faculty, you're not going to have some of the luxuries that you have now. So you do have to figure out how to work with your colleagues in terms of arranging a call schedule that's going to work for you, so that you're not on call the night before your operating day, your regular day, right? So that you can do your best in terms of your scheduled list. That you have each other's back in terms of being able to take time that you need if you need family time. And I've been really blessed to have a fantastic group of colleagues here in general surgery. People, we all will pitch in when somebody needs something or needs relief and that sort of thing. I think it's, having a family for me has been really what's grounded me in terms of what's important in life, and being able to then know that, okay, I need to take every Thursday off so that I don't miss a senior basketball game, right? And having, that as something that's just as important in your life as another meeting. And I think what I struggle with most now is doing things for me and having them take as much precedence. So making it to the gym, right? Or taking the time to go for a run. Those are the things that sometimes still get sacrificed. So I'm still working on it. I don't have that balance down yet. I've had, many students, male and female, come to me to ask about this whole work-life balance. And I've often said that you'll drive yourself crazy if every day or every week you're trying to say, am I working too much? Am I working too little? Am I at home too much? Am I home too little? And if you care about the things that you're doing, don't worry about how those scales are looking over time. It'll even out. But there's always, if you take any point in time, those scales are going to look unbalanced, right? So it's better just to, like I said, decide, what it is that's important to you and make them priorities.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice too. It's from a macro perspective, there's 5 or 6 things you want to balance. But in a given week or a given day, something may be allocated 90% of the time, and I think it's really important for the students to know that that's okay.
That's okay. That's okay. That's what has to happen sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, looking back on it, you've obviously have achieved a tremendous amount. Going back to when you were 20 or your early 20s, do you have any advice that you would give to your 20-year-old self now?
To my 20-year-old self, I think probably to be to not worry so much about asking questions of people, and to never hesitate to get involved, and to have a little more self-confidence in one's abilities, and to listen when other people say, I think you might be good at this, or maybe you should try this. And instead of saying, oh, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I'm capable. I don't know if I have the background. I don't know if I have the training. Somebody else is indicating that they believe in you, then listen to that. I think, I think I would have accomplished more earlier.
Well, that's great advice for sure. We also have some people who are in undergrad who are, listening to the show and coming to Medskl.com. Since, some of the questions they ask are, what makes an ideal physician, or what's an excellent candidate for medicine? Do you have any perspective on that or thoughts on that?
Oh, what makes an ideal candidate for medicine? I mean, it's not always just about your background and what your degree is in, because I think people from all kinds of different educational backgrounds can make excellent physicians. I think it is a matter of demonstrating dedication to that human, the human good, right? That you want to make a difference, to care for people. And because I think that's so key throughout all of our careers in medicine, is that to be successful, the patient always has to be front and center of everything that you do. Whether it's the research or education, it always has to, or your clinical work, it always has to come back, or even my administrative work. It all comes back to what's going to benefit patients. And that might be an individual patient, or, a broad group of patients. So that I think that if, they have that sense of desire there to do that, then that's going to make somebody a good physician. I think communication skills are really, really important. And whether it's with patients or with colleagues or with administrators, you see physicians who struggle. Often it's because of communication skills.
Interesting. And one last question. Now, as again, you've had a tremendous career. As you look forward, to the next phase of what you want to do, is there something, one particular thing that you're going to look back on when you've finished your career and you've said, what, like this is something amazing that I've achieved, and something that I'm very, very proud of. And you may have already achieved that at this point already. But I'm always interested in people sort of looking back and at the end of the career and saying, this is something that I feel really proud about.
Well, I do feel really proud about the difference that I've made for patients, just, in my role as a general surgeon and as an intensivist. And so I do feel that I feel very gratified. So if I accomplished nothing else, that is enough to sustain me and to make me feel that I've made an impact in the world. Because as you know, as a surgeon, you make a huge difference in individual patients' lives. So I'm very satisfied with that. On a broader level, I still have work to do with our department. And that's, the greater mission of education and research, and putting the department in a position where it can be sustainable financially in these difficult times. And I think I probably share that goal with probably every chair across the country, and every administrator across the country.
Yeah, it's not an easy job to be running a department, particularly in these times. So definitely kudos to you, Dr. Reid. It's really been a pleasure to talk. Thanks so much for the wonderful advice that you've given us, and for taking the time out of your day to do this.
Thanks very much. I really enjoyed it, and I thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. So for the rest of you, that was a wonderful discussion we had with Dr. Susan Reid from McMaster University. We're working on a number of other great shows. Remember to subscribe, and feel free to drop us a line if you have any questions that you want us to ask the next mentors. Thanks for tuning in.